With me today, I have two bikes that are a first for the manufacturer that they come out of. This TVS Ronin, TVS claims it to be a bit of a scrambler, a bit of a roadster, a bit of an adventure bike, a bit of a commuter, basically a little bit of everything. And this here, the Hunter 350, is the most affordable Royal Enfield to date and also the most youthful. Now, the target audience for these bikes are going to be youngsters, and more often than not, a youngster has a single bike garage. So, for that bike to fit his bill or her bill, it needs to do a bit of everything, and that's exactly what we are going to be doing today. Me and Mandar are going to be taking these two bikes to Goa, to IBW, to the home of bikers, and on the way we're going to be finding out just how capable these bikes are at munching miles, how fuel efficient they are, how they handle the twisty stuff, and just overall how they are even in the narrow streets of Goa. So, which one should you be putting your money on? Watch this video to find out. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the Evo India channel and click on that bell icon to stay notified on all things thrill of riding. Alright, so now that we're here, we're going to talk about the design of both of these bikes. I'm going to start with the Hunter. Now the Hunter, it's a proper neo-retro looking motorcycle, and that's what Royal Enfield markets it as well. If you look at it and you look at it from all the sides, it really starts to become obvious that this looks like a baby Interceptor. Even a certain British twin, which you let me know in the comment section down below. But yeah, that styling, this whole design language is really working for me. Over the last few years, Royal Enfield has also really upped their game in terms of build quality, and that shows on this bike as well. The switch gear, these levers, these nice fat chunky levers, the whole setup really works for it. And small design elements like this offset instrument cluster, this short stubby exhaust, those 17-inch wheels and the design of the wheels as well. Everything flows very cohesively. Now the only problem is that this is a small bike, and for a bigger rider like me, as you can see, I look pretty large on the bike. But for the young adult, this would be a very compelling choice because unlike other Royal Enfields, this is really compact in terms of dimension and more importantly in terms of weight. This weighs significantly lesser than its closest. The next step, which would be the Classic, this weighs nearly 10 kilos less than that, which means it's easier to handle as well. And that is something a new buyer will certainly appreciate while getting that quintessential Royal Enfield DNA. Now, onto the Ronin. These two bikes, though they look similar, they're two poles apart in terms of their design. And that definitely does grab a lot of eyeballs, and Mandar's going to tell you more about why.
The Ronin looks more modern, and that is because of its styling elements, the LED headlight, the golden upside down forks, which also make it look a lot more expensive than it really is, and also these sculpted mirror arms. But it only looks good from the front, that is what I feel, because the tail, that looks a little odd, and I think Karan will certainly agree on that factor.
Yeah, I feel like the whole design of the Ronin in bits and pieces, if you look at just the front end or just the middle section, it does look quite handsome. But when it's all put together, it doesn't really flow very well, not for me and Mandar at least. There are some people who will like it, and there are people who definitely do, because we've been stopped and asked what bike it is, because they really like how it looks and sounds also for that matter. But elements like the rear end, it feels a little barren or a bit of an afterthought in fact when you look at the rest of the design. And even things like the instrument cluster, it's so big and chunky, and that just doesn't work well for me. But on the flip side, the Ronin is the better equipped bike. Like Mandar said, you get upside down forks. These levers, though not as nice feeling and chunky as these, are adjustable for reach on both the clutch and the brake. You have a lot more information on that instrument cluster. You get not only like this one, the Hunter, it gets a gear position indicator, your trip meter, odometer, fuel level indicator, and your speed. That's pretty much it. But this, apart from all this, also get features like your turn-by-turn navigation. Now for the Royal Enfield, that Tripper pod adds to the ex-showroom price because you have to buy that separately. But the navigation is baked into the instrument cluster, and there's a small area that's empty otherwise, but is populated by your turn navigations when you have your phone connected. Apart from that, you also have your distance to empty, something this misses out on again. You have different trip settings and
also two riding modes.
Oh right, yeah, this does get riding modes. Now riding modes doesn't really change the engine's performance. It's more to alter the dual channel ABS characteristics. So you have an urban mode which is less intrusive and a rain mode which is supposed to be more intrusive. But more on that later. But now here's the main question. Me and he aren't planning to buy either of these bikes, but you just might be. Which would you be putting your money on, just in terms of looks? Let us know in the comment section down below. In terms of performance, the Hunter 350 uses a long stroke 350cc motor, while the Ronin uses a 225cc short stroke engine, which attempts to imitate the power delivery of a long stroke mill. Now, the Hunter 350 brings to the table staggering amounts of refinement with its J series engine, and contrary to what you might believe, this thumper is also quite rev happy. The gears are well laid out and vibes are in check for the most part unless you're really caning it. The engine setup, however, isn't perfect. The Hunter 350 is an inherently sporty bike on the chassis front at least, and in that regard, it feels like the engine is the odd piece of the puzzle and you're really left wanting for a much peppier power plant. Considering that this is primarily an urban bike, the clutch action is a little too heavy. In fact, it feels heavier than the clutch on the Meteor 350 and the Classic 350. This is despite it using the same engine as the other two bikes. Then there is the 225cc Ronin engine. The engine block of the Ronin is essentially that of the Apache 200 but with a bigger bore and a different head. Power-wise, the Ronin has a near identical output to that of the Hunter, but it makes less torque. Now the Ronin, it will accelerate off the line faster than the Hunter 350. This is due to shorter gearing and a more potent low and mid range. Clutch action is extremely light and effortless, and this leads to a more pleasurable experience in the city. Get to open highways and the same pleasure quickly turns into displeasure. That is because the short gearing means that there's barely any oomph above 6000 RPM, and at this point there are quite a few vibrations creeping in at the bars and the pegs. You desperately feel the need for a 6th gear or an overdrive gear. Comfortable cruising for both bikes is around 90 to 95 kilometers per hour, but at this point the Royal Enfield feels a lot more relaxed. Now the Ronin is TVS's idea of a do-it-all bike. It gets cruiser-like forward-placed foot pegs, upside-down forks, a tall wide handlebar and dual-purpose tires. The ride quality of the Ronin is quite supple and it soaks up most of the imperfections on the road quite well. However, the riding position with the forward-placed foot pegs and the tall bars is a little awkward and you're hunched forward ever so slightly, and because of your feet being ahead, it feels a little awkward. Now this also does mean that you do feel the jolts from the monoshock going straight up your backside, and that can get uncomfortable over prolonged periods of time. Now the Ronin, it's an extremely neutral handler. The rake angle and wheel setup endows the bike with light handling, making it easy to filter through traffic. Now, you take the bike to a set of twisties and it immediately becomes apparent that the foot peg position is a problem when you want to do some hardcore cornering. Because of the way they are placed, you start grounding them out almost instantly regardless of the rider's weight. All this is acceptable and even pleasant for the most part, but where things start to go really wrong is in the braking department. The top end variant that we have tested comes with dual channel ABS. Now while the braking performance is adequate, there was something severely wrong with the ABS calibration, because on various instances the front would almost lock up and the braking distances would increase dramatically. This is quite risky in the real world and this is something that needs to be rectified as soon as possible. Now the Hunter 350, it's a departure from what we have been getting from Royal Enfield in the past. It is almost 10 kilos lighter than its sibling, but it could stand to be lighter still. The seat height is low and accessible, and the riding position is surely more aggressive than that of the Ronin. You're hunched slightly forward and the foot pegs are slightly more rear set than standard commuters. This riding position along with the firm suspension setup is something you will definitely appreciate in the twisties, but you will be left yearning for grippier tires. The bike handles like a sporty naked and definitely eggs you to go faster through the bends, but sadly the engine just does not comply. And on the flip side, the same stiff suspension setup is something you won't like all too much in this city. The rear twin shocks are too stiff and even my large frame didn't seem to help iron out bumps all that well. And the rear set foot pegs also become a bit tiring out on the highways. Now you do get dual channel ABS on this top end Metro variant that we are riding, and the ABS system is calibrated just fine. The brakes, however, they could do with a little more bite. Alright, so now we are here at a petrol pump. We have tanked up these bikes. In fact, we're tanking them up after doing the range test, and before you all get alarmed, don't worry. My healthy self hasn't done the range test. Mandar, who's closer to the average size, has done this range test, so he's going to tell you more about the numbers that we got from this test.
Well, the Ronin, it returned us 37 kmpl on this test, and the Hunter, it returned us 33 kmpl on this test. But one thing that should be noted is I was riding both bikes with a heavy wrist. The Ronin, it gets a 14-liter fuel tank, but the Hunter, it gets a 13-liter fuel tank.
Now that will affect range, and you have to bear in mind the riding conditions are really varied. Our riding conditions have been primarily ghats, highways and some tight city traffic. So if you're riding only in the city, or if you're riding only on the highway, or if you are as healthy as I am, your numbers might vary, but this should give you an approximate figure of what you can expect from these bikes. Also bear in mind that this is a 350cc engine that's displacing quite a bit more than that. So for it to get close within 4 to 5 kilometers per liter of that is still good. Alright, so we've ridden both of these bikes for over 800 kilometers, and this riding has been a mix of highways, tight city roads, ghats, a lot of ghats, and even some B roads. Now, to answer the crucial question, which one should you be putting your money on? Well, as I said in the start of the video, both bikes are similar, but they are poles apart. The Royal Enfield, it's not a multi-purpose bike, and Royal Enfield isn't marketing it to be that either. It's a neo-retro roadster, and its primary sole purpose is to be a good city commuter and take you on that occasional jaunt in the twisties. Whereas the Ronin, according to TVS, this is a bit of a Swiss Army knife. It's supposed to be a jack of all trades, a bit of a cruiser, a bit of an adventure bike, a bit of a tourer, all of that. But here's where the breakup happens. Hunter, it's a great bike in the city. That 17-inch front wheel has really changed your perception of how Royal Enfield is usually meant to handle this bike. It's extremely agile, it tips into corners really well. You can flick it through traffic no matter what, and the narrow dimensions also allow you to get out and filter through traffic very easily. The same holds true for the Ronin as well, but the Ronin is just a little more supple in terms of its ride quality, so most would prefer that. The Hunter is a bit stiff, and it does become a little uncomfortable, but on the flip side, because of that stiffness, you get great handling in the mountain roads. And the seat is also a little stiff, so that's not the most ideal for touring. So long days in the saddle and you will walk away with a sore butt. The seat on the Ronin is just a little more supple. The Hunter, it isn't perfect as well, but in my opinion, it does what it sets out to do, and it does that rather well. Ronin, it also does what it sets out to do, but it's a little confused in that regard. What it's trying to be is still not clear. So in all senses, it's a jack of all trades but a master of none. But in this case, the Hunter, at least in my personal opinion, takes the win just because it knows what it wants to do, and it does that rather nicely.
And both the bikes, they're also priced very, very closely. Both the Hunter as well as the Ronin, they get 3 variants each, and they begin at about 1.49 lakh ex-showroom Delhi. But the Hunter, it's a little more expensive. Even the top-end variant which we have here, that is almost 3,000 rupees more expensive than the top-end variant of this Ronin. So if you want a bike with a lot of features, the Ronin, that is your best bet.
Right, so I agree with Mandar in the fact that it has a lot more features, but the flaws do outweigh the pros in my opinion. Now, the question is, which one would you put your money on? Let us know in the comment section down below, and thanks for watching.
I'm riding the Hunter now.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.